Stop what you're doing right now. What I'm about to share with you will shatter everything you think you know about how people see you. Master Shi Heng Yi, the legendary Shaolin monk who's transformed millions of lives, revealed something so profound about human presence that it made me question every interaction I've ever had. These aren't just appearance tips. This is ancient wisdom about energy, respect, and the invisible forces that either elevate you or destroy your reputation before you even speak. Stay until the end, because what I reveal in the final point will change how you walk through the world forever. Inner chaos. Let me tell you something that will hit you like a lightning bolt. The first thing that cheapens your appearance isn't your clothes, your hair, or even your physical features. It's the chaos you carry inside your mind, and people can sense it from across the room like a predator sensing fear. Master Shi Heng Yi teaches that your internal state creates an energetic field around you that speaks louder than any designer outfit ever could. Think about the last time you met someone who seemed off. You couldn't put your finger on it, but something felt scattered, desperate, or unstable about them. That wasn't intuition. That was your nervous system picking up on their internal disharmony. When your mind is racing with anxiety, self-doubt, or endless mental chatter, it creates a frequency that repels people at a subconscious level. Your thoughts literally change your posture, your breathing, your micro-expressions, and the way you hold space in the world. The ancient masters understood that presence isn't about perfection, it's about integration. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are aligned, you radiate something that money can't buy: authentic power. But when there's a war happening inside your head, when you're constantly second-guessing yourself, when you're running mental scenarios of failure or rejection, that internal storm becomes your external reality. People feel it before you even open your mouth. Here's what most people don't realize. That person who seems effortlessly magnetic, who draws people in without trying, who commands respect simply by existing, they've mastered their inner world first. They've learned to quiet the mental noise, to center themselves, to approach each moment from a place of calm presence rather than reactive chaos. This isn't about meditation apps or breathing exercises, though those can help. This is about fundamental self-mastery, about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need external validation because they've found unshakable peace within themselves. Desperate energy. The second thing that will absolutely destroy your presence is desperation, and it's so much more subtle than you think. Desperation isn't just about being needy in relationships or begging for opportunities. It's that underlying current of not enough that runs through everything you do. It's the energy of someone who believes they have to prove their worth instead of simply embodying it. Master Shi Heng Yi speaks about the difference between flowing like water and grasping like a drowning person. When you're desperate, you grasp. You talk too much, trying to fill every silence. You laugh too loudly at things that aren't funny. You name drop, you overshare, you perform instead of simply being. And people can smell this desperation like smoke from miles away. I've watched people destroy their own attractiveness in real time because they couldn't sit comfortably in their own skin. They'd walk into a room and immediately start scanning for validation, for approval, for someone to make them feel significant. They'd interrupt conversations, one-up other people's stories, or try so hard to be impressive that they became exhausting to be around. This isn't about being introverted or extroverted. This is about the energy you bring to every interaction. The most powerful people I've ever met have something in common. They don't need anything from you. They're genuinely interested in you, but they don't need your approval, your attention, or your validation to feel complete. They've cultivated such a strong sense of self that they can afford to be curious about others without agenda. This creates an irresistible magnetism because rare is the person who interacts with you without wanting something in return. When you operate from abundance instead of scarcity, when you truly believe you have value to offer the world, your entire demeanor changes. You speak more slowly because you're not racing to get your words out before someone cuts you off. You listen more deeply because you're not mentally preparing your next impressive statement. You move through the world like someone who belongs there, not like someone desperately trying to earn their place. False confidence. Here's where it gets dangerous, and this is something that will probably trigger some people watching this. What most people call confidence is actually arrogance wearing a mask, and it's one of the most repulsive qualities you can possess. Real confidence, the kind that Master Shi Heng Yi embodies, is quiet, grounded, and needs no external proof. False confidence is loud, aggressive, and constantly seeking to dominate others to maintain its fragile foundation. False confidence shows up as talking over people, as never admitting mistakes, as needing to be the expert on every topic, as treating service workers poorly, as name-dropping and humble bragging disguised as casual conversation. It's the energy of someone who's so terrified of being seen as weak that they've built an entire persona around being strong, but that strength is brittle because it depends on everyone else being smaller. I've seen this destroy people's reputations in business, in relationships, in every area of life. They think they're projecting strength, but what people actually see is insecurity masked as bravado. True confidence doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need to win every argument, to have the last word, to be right about everything. True confidence can say, "I don't know," without feeling diminished. It can apologize when wrong without feeling destroyed. It can celebrate other people's success without feeling threatened. The Shaolin tradition teaches that real power comes from inner cultivation, not external domination. When you've done the work to know yourself deeply, to accept your flaws and strengths equally, to find peace with your humanity, you don't need to project an image of perfection. You can be authentically you, which is infinitely more attractive than any performance could ever be. But here's the part that might hurt to hear. If you're constantly trying to prove how confident you are, you're not confident. If you need to tell people how successful, how intelligent, how attractive you are, you don't believe it yourself. And if you don't believe it, why should anyone else? Energy vampirism. The fourth thing that will make people unconsciously avoid you is energy vampirism. And this might be the most important thing I share today, because most people do this without realizing it. Energy vampires aren't just the obvious complainers and drama creators. They're anyone who consistently takes more energy from interactions than they give back. Master Shi Heng Yi teaches about energy exchange as a fundamental law of human interaction. Every conversation, every relationship, every social exchange involves an energetic transaction. Some people leave you feeling energized, inspired, and uplifted after spending time with them. Others leave you feeling drained, heavy, and somehow diminished, even if the conversation seemed pleasant on the surface. Energy vampirism shows up in subtle ways that most people never recognize in themselves. It's the person who always steers conversations back to their problems. It's the chronic complainer who never wants solutions, just endless sympathy. It's the person who takes emotional support but never offers it in return. It's the friend who only calls when they need something, who disappears when things are going well but reappears during every crisis. But it goes deeper than that. Energy vampires are people who haven't learned to generate their own emotional stability, their own sense of worth, their own joy. They're constantly looking to others to fill the void inside them, to make them feel better about themselves, to provide the validation and emotional regulation they haven't developed internally. They're unconsciously using other people as emotional support systems without reciprocating. Here's what's tragic about this. Energy vampires aren't bad people. They're usually people who are suffering, who are genuinely struggling with pain, loneliness, or insecurity. But their coping mechanism, draining energy from others instead of generating their own, creates a cycle that pushes people away, which increases their pain and desperation, which makes them drain even more energy from the few people who remain. The solution isn't to become cold or unempathetic. It's to learn to fill your own cup first, to develop your own emotional regulation, to become someone who gives more than they take in relationships. When you've cultivated inner abundance, you naturally become someone others want to be around because you're contributing positive energy rather than depleting it. Reactive living. This next point will expose something that most people spend their entire lives unconsciously doing, and it's destroying their presence in ways they never even realize. The fifth thing that cheapens your appearance is reactive living, being a pinball that bounces off whatever happens to you instead of a mountain that remains centered, regardless of the storms around it. Reactive people are exhausting to be around because their emotional state is completely dependent on external circumstances. When something good happens, they're on top of the world. When something challenging occurs, they're in crisis mode. They have no emotional center, no inner stability that remains constant, regardless of what's happening around them. Every conversation with them is like navigating a minefield, because you never know what's going to trigger their next emotional explosion. Master Shi Heng Yi speaks about the difference between responding and reacting. Reacting is immediate, emotional, and usually unconscious. Responding is thoughtful, intentional, and comes from a centered place. Reactive people make every situation about themselves, turning every conversation into their personal drama. They can't hear criticism without getting defensive, can't witness success without feeling threatened, can't experience setbacks without creating a crisis. But here's what makes reactive living so insidious. Our culture has normalized it. We've been taught that having strong emotional reactions proves we care, that getting triggered shows we're passionate, that losing our composure is somehow authentic. But the ancient wisdom traditions, including the Shaolin path, teach the opposite. They teach that emotional reactivity is a sign of inner weakness, not strength. Think about the people you most respect, the ones whose opinions matter to you, the ones you'd want to have in a crisis. Are they reactive people who explode at every provocation? Or are they the ones who remain calm in storms, who respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally, who seem to have found some unshakable center that external circumstances can't disturb? When you're reactive, you're basically advertising to the world that you haven't mastered yourself. You're showing everyone that your emotions are controlled by circumstances rather than by your own inner strength. You're demonstrating that you're not safe to be vulnerable with, not reliable in difficult times, not mature enough to handle the complexities of real relationships or meaningful challenges. Attention seeking. The sixth thing that will instantly cheapen your presence is attention seeking. But not in the way most people think. I'm not just talking about the obvious attention seekers, the social media addicts posting every meal, the people who turn every conversation into their personal monologue, the ones who dress or behave outrageously just to get noticed. I'm talking about the subtle, unconscious ways that almost everyone seeks attention and how this neediness repels the very connections we're trying to create. Master Shi Heng Yi teaches that true presence comes from being so complete within yourself that you don't need external recognition to feel whole. But most people are walking around with a constant, low-level hunger for validation, for acknowledgement, for someone to notice them and confirm that they matter. This creates an energetic neediness that people can sense immediately, even if they can't articulate what feels off about the interaction. Attention seeking shows up as interrupting conversations to share your own similar story. It's posting things on social media not because they're meaningful to you, but because you want to see how many likes and comments they'll generate. It's name dropping, subtle bragging disguised as casual conversation, fishing for compliments by putting yourself down, or creating drama to become the center of attention, even if it's negative attention. But the deepest form of attention seeking is the inability to be comfortable with not being the focus of every interaction. It's the person who can't celebrate someone else's success without finding a way to make it about themselves. It's the inability to sit quietly in a group without needing to contribute, to prove your worth, to remind everyone that you're there and you're valuable. Here's what's tragic about attention seeking. It's usually rooted in a deep fear of being forgotten, of not mattering, of being invisible in a world that feels overwhelming and impersonal. But the very behavior designed to get attention, the neediness, the performing, the constant subtle bids for validation, actually pushes people away. People are drawn to those who are self-contained, who don't need anything from them, who are genuinely interested in others rather than desperately trying to make others interested in them. When you've cultivated genuine self-worth, when you truly believe you have value independent of other people's recognition, you stop needing to prove it. You can celebrate others authentically because their success doesn't threaten your sense of self. You can be quiet when you have nothing meaningful to add because your worth isn't dependent on always being heard. You can exist comfortably without being the center of attention because you found a center within yourself that doesn't depend on external validation. Victim mentality. This seventh point is going to be controversial, and I can already feel some people getting defensive, but this needs to be said because it's destroying more lives than any other mindset I can think of. Victim mentality will not only cheapen your appearance, it will systematically destroy every relationship, every opportunity, and every chance at genuine happiness you'll ever have. Master Shi Heng Yi teaches about taking responsibility not just for your actions, but for your responses to everything that happens to you. Victim mentality is the opposite of this. It's the belief that your circumstances, your past, other people, or the world in general are responsible for your current state and future possibilities. It's giving away your power to everyone and everything except yourself. Now, let me be clear about something because I know this is sensitive territory. Acknowledging that bad things have happened to you isn't victim mentality. Processing trauma, seeking support, and healing from genuine harm are necessary and healthy. Victim mentality is when you use your past pain as an excuse to avoid taking responsibility for your present choices and future growth. Victim mentality shows up as chronic complaining without action, as blaming everyone else for your problems, as believing that the world owes you something because of what you've been through. It's the person who's still talking about their toxic ex from 5 years ago, who explains every failure as someone else's fault, who sees themselves as perpetually wronged by circumstances beyond their control. But here's what makes victim mentality so insidious. It feels protective. It feels like you're defending yourself, like you're making sure people understand that your struggles aren't your fault. But what you're actually doing is training yourself to be powerless, to see yourself as someone things happen to, rather than someone who creates their reality through their choices and responses. People unconsciously avoid victims because victim energy is draining and disempowering. When someone is constantly in victim mode, every conversation becomes about their problems, their unfair circumstances, their latest crisis that's beyond their control. They're energetic black holes that suck the life out of every interaction while offering nothing positive in return. The most attractive quality a person can possess is the ability to take ownership of their life completely. Not just the good parts, but everything. When you meet someone who's been through hell but has used that experience to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, you're drawn to them because they radiate power and resilience. When you meet someone who's been through difficulty and uses it as evidence that life is unfair and they're helpless, you instinctively want to get away because their powerlessness is contagious. Spiritual bypassing. The eighth thing that will cheapen your appearance is something that's become epidemic in our culture, especially among people who are consciously working on themselves. It's called spiritual bypassing, and it's the use of spiritual concepts, practices, or language to avoid dealing with reality, emotions, or personal responsibility. Master Shi Heng Yi embodies authentic spirituality, grounded, practical, and integrated with real-world wisdom. But spiritual bypassing is the opposite. It's using phrases like, "everything happens for a reason," to avoid processing grief. It's claiming to manifest outcomes while avoiding the practical work required to create them. It's talking about high vibrations while treating people poorly. It's using meditation or spiritual practices as an escape from life rather than a tool for engaging with life more fully. Spiritual bypassing shows up as toxic positivity, the inability to sit with negative emotions, your own or others. It's the person who responds to someone's pain with platitudes about choosing happiness or raising your frequency. It's using spiritual language to sound enlightened while behaving in ways that are selfish, irresponsible, or harmful. It's the belief that being spiritual means you're above normal human emotions, conflicts, or challenges. But here's what makes spiritual bypassing so dangerous. It creates a false sense of superiority while actually preventing real growth. People who spiritually bypass often believe they're more evolved than others because they've learned spiritual vocabulary and concepts, but they haven't done the actual inner work to integrate those teachings into their daily lives. They're performing spirituality rather than living it. Real spirituality, the kind that Master Shi Heng Yi teaches, is messy and human and grounded in reality. It doesn't promise that you'll never feel anger, sadness, or fear. It teaches you how to work with these emotions skillfully. It doesn't suggest that you can think your way out of practical problems. It emphasizes the importance of right action in the material world. It doesn't claim that awakened people are above human nature. It shows how to embrace your humanity fully while cultivating wisdom and compassion. People are repelled by spiritual bypassing because it feels fake and superior. When someone responds to your genuine concerns with spiritual platitudes, when they can't engage with reality because they're too busy maintaining their enlightened image, when they use their spiritual practice as a shield against authentic human connection, they become impossible to relate to or trust. Physical neglect. The ninth thing that cheapens your appearance is physical neglect, but this goes far deeper than just hygiene or fashion. I'm talking about the relationship you have with your body and how that relationship is reflected in everything about your presence in the world. Master Shi Heng Yi teaches that the body is the temple of consciousness, and how you treat your temple reveals everything about your relationship with yourself. Physical neglect isn't just about being overweight or having bad skin. It's about the energy of someone who has given up on themselves, who doesn't believe they're worth caring for, who has resigned themselves to decay rather than committing to vitality. Physical neglect shows up as poor posture that communicates defeat before you even speak. It's the energy of someone who moves through the world like they're apologizing for taking up space. It's bad breath, body odor, unkempt appearance, not because of poverty or lack of access, but because of a fundamental lack of self-respect that shows up in how you present yourself to the world. But it goes deeper than surface appearances. Physical neglect is visible in low energy, in the heaviness of someone who doesn't take care of their body, in the sluggishness that comes from poor nutrition, lack of movement, or chronic sleep deprivation. It's the energy of someone who has disconnected from their physical form, who sees their body as something that happens to them rather than something they actively care for and cultivate. Here's what most people don't understand. Taking care of your physical appearance isn't vanity, it's self-respect made visible. When you exercise regularly, eat nourishing food, maintain good hygiene, dress well for your circumstances, and carry yourself with good posture, you're communicating to the world that you believe you're worth investing in. You're showing that you have enough self-regard to present your best self to others. The opposite is also true. When you neglect your physical form, when you dress carelessly, when you move through the world with poor posture and low energy, you're broadcasting that you don't value yourself highly enough to make an effort. And if you don't value yourself, why should anyone else? This isn't about having perfect genetics, expensive clothes, or conforming to beauty standards. This is about the energy of someone who takes responsibility for their physical presence in the world, who understands that how you show up physically is a form of communication, a sign of respect for yourself and others. Unconscious living. And now we come to the final point, the one that underlies all the others and might be the most important thing I share with you today. The 10th thing that cheapens your appearance more than anything else is unconscious living. Moving through life on autopilot, reacting instead of responding, letting your conditioning and habits control you instead of making conscious choices about who you want to be and how you want to show up in the world. Master Shi Heng Yi's entire teaching is about awakening from the trance of unconscious living, about becoming fully present and intentional in every moment. But most people spend their entire lives sleepwalking, going through the motions without ever really examining their thoughts, their behaviors, or their impact on others. They're living out unconscious patterns that were programmed into them in childhood, reacting to triggers they don't understand, making choices based on conditioning they've never questioned. Unconscious living shows up as repeated patterns in relationships, always dating the same type of person and getting the same disappointing results. It's the inability to learn from mistakes because you're not conscious enough to recognize the patterns that create them. It's saying things you don't mean, making promises you don't keep, living in a way that contradicts your stated values because you've never actually examined what you truly believe or why. But the deepest form of unconscious living is the failure to recognize that every moment is a choice. Every interaction, every response, every thought you entertain is an opportunity to consciously decide who you want to be. Most people live as if they're victims of their own personality, as if their reactions are automatic and unchangeable, as if they have no choice in how they respond to life's challenges. Here's what will change everything for you. The moment you realize that consciousness is a choice, that presence is a practice, that you can consciously decide how to respond to every situation instead of just reacting unconsciously, you step into a different level of personal power. You stop being a leaf blown around by the wind of circumstances and become a tree rooted in intentional awareness. Conscious living means examining your thoughts instead of believing them automatically. It means questioning your emotional reactions instead of assuming they're justified. It means taking responsibility not just for your actions, but for your inner state, your energy, your impact on others. It means living with such intentionality that every aspect of your presence, from how you speak, to how you carry yourself, to how you treat the people around you, reflects conscious choice rather than unconscious habit. Final message, 12:30:13. Here's the truth that Master Shi Heng Yi would want you to understand. Everything I've shared with you today isn't really about your appearance at all. It's about your presence, your consciousness, your relationship with yourself and the world around you. These 10 things cheapen your appearance because they reflect a deeper disconnection from your authentic power, your natural dignity, your inherent worth as a conscious being. The people who command genuine respect, who draw others to them effortlessly, who seem to possess an unshakable confidence and magnetism, they haven't mastered the art of impression management. They've mastered the art of being fully themselves, consciously and intentionally in every moment. They've done the inner work to align their thoughts, emotions, and actions. They've cultivated the kind of presence that needs no performance because it's rooted in genuine self-knowledge and self-acceptance. But here's what might be the most important thing I can tell you. Every single thing on this list is completely within your control. Your inner chaos, your desperate energy, your false confidence, your energy vampirism, your reactive patterns, your attention-seeking, your victim mentality, your spiritual bypassing, your physical neglect, your unconscious living, all of it can be transformed through conscious choice and committed practice. The question isn't whether you can change these patterns. The question is whether you will. Whether you'll have the courage to look honestly at yourself, to admit where you've been unconscious, to take full responsibility for your presence in the world. Whether you'll commit to the daily practice of becoming the kind of person who naturally commands respect, who draws others in through authentic magnetism, who lives with such integrity and consciousness that your very presence becomes a gift to everyone around you. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. This is about stripping away everything that isn't truly you, everything that cheapens your natural dignity, everything that keeps you from expressing the fullness of who you really are. When you do this work, when you commit to conscious living at this level, you don't just change how others see you, you transform how you see yourself. And that transformation changes everything.